you've got price parity, you've got fantastic product. And of course, it's a very, very strong competition because the Chinese are ahead. And you'll have two type of Western companies, the one who adapt and the one who will go into oblivion because they did not turn the corner fast enough.
And I always say the same sentence, and probably you heard it, a project is only a project if you find a bank who finances it. So, and if the bank doesn't understand this FCA, because it's too complicated and there are too many variables inside, then you don't get a financing. That's it. That's the simple rule. And this is what politicians very often underestimate.
With costs having come right down, people are rethinking what's possible with battery energy storage systems. Last month, Bloomberg NEF upgraded its forecast for stationary batteries in its new energy outlook to 3.8 terawatts by 2050, a 17-fold increase on today. Hello and welcome to the Smarter E podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Gifford, and we're talking batteries with two very influential people in BESS project development and finance today. Stefan Mueller is a co-founder, owner, and the COO of project developer and independent power producer ENERPARC, and he takes us inside the fast-growing Germany energy storage marketplace. I caught up with Stefan a few weeks ago at the Battery Business Development Forum in Frankfurt. And while we're talking finance, our second guest is Laurent Segalen, the founder of energy transition investment platform Megawatt X. I spoke to Laurent at the SolarPower Summit last month in Brussels. He's also the co-host of the Redefining Energy podcast, and he doesn't sit back with his opinions when it comes to energy storage of all flavors, including green hydrogen. If you're a big green hydrogen supporter, some of Laurent's opinions might take you a bit aback, but we'll get a pro-hydrogen expert on the pod in the coming weeks to balance things out. This episode of the Smarter E podcast is brought to you by Hensel AnyCharge, another e-mobility project, and already thinking about the testing and documentation stress. This is how charging distribution is done today. Ready to connect, charging distribution straight from the catalog. Ordered in 5 minutes, ready to ship in 5 working days. Hensel AnyCharge. Simply safe, safely simple. Learn more and save time at anycharge.de. That's ENY charge.de. Hensel AnyCharge. Simply safe, safely simple. If you're listening to or watching the Smarter E podcast for the first time, please subscribe, follow, and leave a rating or review. It's free, only takes a moment, and helps us grow the podcast, and also get great guests like Laurent and Stefan. And as always, you can get in touch with us anytime at podcast@thesmartere.com. SolarPower Summit 2026 in May in Brussels. It was also very much an energy storage summit because it's a technology that's desperately needed in European electricity markets to enable the ongoing expansion of renewable energy. Laurent Segalen is a clean energy investor and the host of the Redefining Energy podcast. And energy storage investment is an area which you have a lot of experience in. But of course, energy storage and e-mobility are also closely related. We're in the second energy crisis of this decade. What kind of impact do you see it having in terms of electrification?
Well, there are trends. And the trends is a trend of electrification. If you look at the last Amber report, 100% of the additional energy or electricity in the world come from renewable energy. So we are putting more and more intermittent sources on the grid, which is great because they're fast and they're cheap. But of course, you need to balance the whole system and to balance the system, you just have two ways, which are called space and time. Space are more interconnector, bigger grids, and time is batteries. And the great thing is, what we've seen here is that the battery technology is now good, stabilized, understood, bankable, and these are the discussions we have had here.
And when we're talking about e-mobility in particular, of course, one of the major impacts of the conflict in the Middle East, the recent blockade of oil and gas supplies as well, is on oil and on petrol fuels, diesel, kerosene. What kind of impact do you anticipate for the transportation segment?
Well, it started to happen for EVs, and now it's going to happen for vans and trucks. And I think that the story of the electrification of transportation is the big story of the next 10 years. Because yes, people talk about data centers. Yes, people talk about heat pumps, cooling, heating. But the main driver of electricity growth is going to be the electrification of transport. And now we reach a point in certain places, sector, but it's just getting bigger and bigger, where you've got price parity, you've got fantastic products. And of course, it's a very, very strong competition because the Chinese are ahead. And you'll have two types of Western companies, the one who adapt and the one who will go into oblivion because they did not turn the corner fast enough.
But when we're talking about EVs or trucks and vans, like you say, these can tend to be relatively long investment cycles, can't they? That people might replace their car every 10 years or so, or if you're turning a fleet around, it could be a very lengthy process. Do you think this will be a slow process or a quick one?
So, yeah, I understand that it takes 20 years to rotate a car passenger fleet. I think for trucks can be faster, probably something like 10 years. Look, there's a lot of emotional connection of someone with his car, but when it comes to trucks, it's pure economics. So the price of diesel is going to become higher. And if you look at the economics of truck, it's not just the cost of the fuel, it's the cost of maintenance. And the cost of maintenance is sometimes is bigger than the cost of the fuel. And the great thing with the electric truck is that the maintenance costs are much lower. The big challenge we're going to have now is about charging. It's going to be charging depot, it's going to be fast charging, but there's a lot of progress being made right now. And the interesting thing is, I just give you two stats. In China, 2025 versus 2024, the amount of power sold through EV charging is up 45%. So that's going very, very fast. If I look at Norway, who was the first to electrify its fleet, because now 100% of every new car is electric, the main EV charging networks in 2025 for the first time made money. So it takes about 2-3 years for the charging infrastructure to start being a very profitable investment. And of course, it's going to accelerate. And it's true that there's always the chicken and egg. Do I need the EVs to get the charging infrastructure to get the EVs? But now the financial signals which are given to investors is that now EV charging is a profitable option within 18 months of ramping up the curve. So I'm extremely positive. It's going to happen. You can put whatever regulation you want, to push it, to slow it. Just the technology is there and the economics are there.
And when we're talking about trucks, why do you think this kind of long haul or short haul or trucking logistics is particularly important in terms of the energy transition?
Well, because if you look at the oil consumption, the 100 million barrel per day that we have, well, it's not very clear how much is stuck in Hormuz. And, by the time this goes out, nobody knows. But roughly 50% of oil is for land transportation, which is going to be 2/3 EV, 1/3 truck. Then you've got 10%, which is aviation. Then 10% that's maritime, and 30%, which is chemical. If you look, chemical, oil is very hard to displace. Marine, jet fuel, I don't know, but now you have 50% technically of the oil consumption, which is at play, and it's happening now. So this is, you want to reduce emission, you want to reduce CO2, you want to reduce climate change, you want to enhance energy security, electrification of transport with the economics ticks all boxes.
And it will also be a big driver of demand for the renewable energy industry.
Absolutely.
And when we're looking at the charging of trucks, of these big fleets, these charging depots, as you say, then we're talking about megawatt scale charging. How big of a challenge is that?
No, it's not really a challenge because, and that's the beauty of batteries, you can put batteries everywhere. You will have the batteries inside the truck, but you will have the batteries at the EV charging level, you will have the batteries at the distribution level, at the transmission level. Batteries are fantastic. You will have batteries, 100 megawatts at the transmission level, and then you will have, tens of megawatts at the distribution levels, and then inside the EV charging the station, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 megawatts, and which means that we can create all those buffers. And people say, oh, it's going to be redundant. But that's how you make a strong system. So the people say, oh, every time we're going to charge our cars, it's going to blow up the grid, are just fossil fuel lobbyists or stupid or both. No, they have no idea what they're talking about. We will, with batteries, make sure that we can charge those trucks, and it's going to be okay.
And the major reason for having the storage at these truck depots or layover sites where they may be charging is because then you can get around the grid operator. You don't need that additional grid connection for this huge offtake from the truck.
Exactly, and the truck will need to charge fast, and then there's no truck for 10 minutes, and then the new truck needs to charge fast again. I know there's a lot of proponents of battery swapping, but at the end of the day, the less you move those parts in and out, and the easier it's going to be. So I believe that a good organization of batteries from big to medium to small, and as the digital layer is just getting better and better and better, will allow us to charge those trucks fast and without any trauma for the system.
And as an investor, from the investor side, is that where you see smart money going? Is there investor appetite for these battery systems, these charging systems for the electrification of haulage?
So what we're seeing is the grid scale big batteries has really taken off phenomenally the past 3-4 years. So investors start to be very comfortable in 500 megawatt batteries, and it seems the bigger the better. But then I have personally concentrated on behind the meter batteries, and there's a lot of opportunities from 2 megawatts down to half a megawatt, down to even 100 kilowatt to replace diesel generators. So the beauty of the battery is that prismatic 314 amp power CATL LFP cell, and it's the Lego. So you can put 200 of them and you get a small battery, or you can put 1,000 of them and you're going to get a medium-sized battery, or you can put several thousands of them and you're going to get a bigger battery. It is the prismatic LFP cell. The first time I saw it was at the Smarter He in Munich a few years ago, and I said, this is it. This is how we build an industry. It's so perfect. It's so scalable. Plus, because it's the same product, the prices are going down, and there's a better understanding. So the moment I saw that battery, I said, okay, We have the tool now.
Yeah. As soon as I saw her passing by, and I will love her till I die. I've heard that saying before. Maybe that was your prismatic cell moment at the Smartery. But what about like hydrogen and alternative fuels? That was often being advanced for trucking in particular, long haul. Any chance left?
Well, I mean, some people may try. What I saw is that Cummins, who was one of the biggest proponents, just did a $500 million write-off their whole hydrogen system. And those guys, they are selling diesel trucks. I've seen the CEO of Air Products, who was one of the most bullish proponents of hydrogen, being fired by his board after losing $3 billion. So if you want to lose money, go to hydrogen. You're pretty sure you're going to burn it.
But then how did we get this momentum behind hydrogen, particularly talking about transportation? That was really pushed very hard. Green hydrogen for transportation. How did it build so much momentum?
Well, it's very simple. The biggest energy lobbying group in Europe is Hydrogen Europe. They have a budget of 70 million euro per year to advertise whatever crap they want, financed by the fossil fuel industry. So yeah, you can create a hype with a nice PR budget, but the economics don't make any sense. You make a 2 minutes calculation, you're going to realize that your green hydrogen is equivalent to a barrel of oil at $500. So fine, $500. Right now the price is around $100 per barrel. Used to be 60 a few months ago. So the only question I always ask: who's paying the difference between 100 and 500? Is it going to be the government, the taxpayer, the green premium? You name it. But everybody likes the idea. Nobody wants to pay for it. So, yeah, whatever.
Okay, well, turning back to the electrification of transport.
I prefer.
Do you really feel that it's one of the most exciting developments in kind of the energy transition right at the moment on the back of this second energy crisis?
Yeah, look, for me, there are three very, very powerful dynamics. As I said, the first one is around grid management, which means digital, space, and time. A lot of development also in long-term transmission, and just better grid management. So that's one. The second thing is going to be all the data centers, because they're coming. That is a huge amount of money being put in the US, but it's coming here. Now, the question I always have is, did we see that type of bubble before, when 25 years ago they told us that the internet would consume half of the power in the world within a decade, which of course never happened? And I look at a light bulb I just bought, very very bright light bulb, and it says 100 watt. But in fact, if you look at it, they say, no, it's 8 watt, equivalent to the former 100 watt.
Yeah.
So the lighting, we had a times 12 gain in energy efficiency. And maybe in chips, we're going to have the same type of energy efficiency, and people are going to realize that those gigawatt data centers, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
So data centers, yes, very exciting. But just in the US, with the supply chain issue of getting your transformers, of getting your turbines, only half of the data center announced this year are just being built right now. So it's going to come, but I don't think it's going to be as big or as transformational as people think it will be. And of course, the last point is the whole heating, cooling. And people always say, yeah, but high temperature. I say, okay, fine. Forget about high temperature. Low temperature, anything below 200 C, we can electrify that, and we will.
Okay, which is particularly space heating and kind of some low temperature industrial processes.
Yeah, like food industry, hospitals.
Yeah.
We can cut half of our industrial gas consumption if we concentrate on simple existing technologies, which is low-grade heat. If people want to do R&D on high-grade heat, good for them. And I'm interested in what's investable.
Sure, and what's possible today. And the high-grade heat, perhaps the smelting, can be left for our green hydrogen friends.
look, whatever they want. I don't care. I'm not touching it.
Laurent Segalen here at the Solar Power Summit 2026. Thank you very much for joining the Spunnery podcast.
My pleasure.
Well, here at the Battery Business and Development Forum in Frankfurt, large-scale batteries are very much in focus, and it's really one of the hottest topics in the renewable energy sector more widely here in Germany, in Europe, but also globally to some extent. And to discuss these developments, some of the challenges and the great opportunity, I'm joined by Stefan Mueller, who is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at ENERPARC. Thank you for joining the Smartery podcast.
Also, thanks a lot to be here.
Now, Stefan, what are your expectations for batteries here in Germany? It really is a huge amount of buzz about this segment of the industry.
Yeah, but I think the good thing is there is something behind the buzz. It's not only the buzzword, it's really a lot of things are happening. The good thing on the whole battery market is that it's quite fragmented, and I think it's a good sign. So you have really small batteries, 1 megawatt hour for own consumption. Then you have behind the meter. You combine whatever car or even truck charging with battery systems, which are then in the market. You have co-located, you have retrofit, you have standalone. And I think this wide variation gives us, I would say, a nice flowers of the whole market. So, and I think this is at the moment, it's not only buzz, it's really something is happening there.
So there's lots of various opportunities for developers like ENERPARC.
It is.
And what are your expectations in terms of volume? We've heard about this huge pipeline that's kind of applied for, awaiting for permission to connect to the grid. Can you talk about megawatts or gigawatts of capacity?
I think we are in the same situation where we've been always with PV in the last few years. So we always underestimate the market dynamics. For sure, there we need to be a bit more conservative, and also the banks need to be conservative. But on the other hand, I see a lot of installations going on. As I mentioned before, the fragmented market from C&I market to residential. We have also the batteries in the car. I mean, we have also a few speakers here in the round. There are 100 gigawatt hours standing on the street and are not in use. So, and I think there are a lot of new opportunities coming up. But for us, the most important part is the very traditional way. We have a PV plant and we do retrofit with, I would say, green or gray energy batteries in the range of 5 to 10 megawatt hours. And this is, I would say, a very solid number. A lot of retrofit will happen. But in total, I think we will see, much more gigawatt hours connected in the next 12 to 24 months than we see on the paper right now. I'm pretty sure. And I speak about more gigawatts.
Okay. And the opportunity, the need that these batteries are fulfilling, we've heard about these very low capture rates. I think Germany last year was something like over 500 hours of negative prices in the power markets. That's really, this volatility is really what's driving batteries.
Correct. And this is the interesting part. No? So on the other hand, you can be full merchant and be active on this. But on the other hand, you can do also peak shaving behind the meter. So I think there are a lot of revenue streams which are interesting for a simple battery. And this is not only the inertia stuff, this can be also secondary, primary, this can be peak shaving, this can be only green energy so that you balance the PPAs and can offer a baseload PPA. I think this is what we haven't done before. And this is also super interesting.
Okay, and that would be working with a big energy off-taker to be able to provide them with 24/7 clean power.
Correct. Because very simple. I mean, we just signed also 65 gigawatt hours in 1 year delivery for a large steel manufacturer. And in generally, they don't like this up and down, which we have. So if we can balance this a little bit and we combine probably wind and solar, and the big peaks or the big downtimes, we cover them with a smaller battery, this would be perfect. And then automatically, we are much more interested to work with these off-takers. So I think to balance this with batteries, perfect.
Well, there's a lot of discussion here in Frankfurt about the revenue stack. So you've mentioned a number of different revenue streams. What is the appetite from investors and from lenders in terms of merchant revenue? Right, that's the kind of arbitrage trading, buying high, buying low, selling high.
Yeah.
How much merchant risk can you take on as a developer?
Naja, I think at the moment, and this is probably a bit of misunderstanding, people see only the battery as one asset, and you pump in energy and you take it out. But the reality is different. There is an energy trader in the market, and if he sees there is negative prices or positive or whatever, they try to make money with this. So you sell and buy, a bit like in the normal stock exchange here in Frankfurt. And finally, you have to deliver the energy sooner or later. And this is what you do then with the battery. So if you ask a trader how often he trades per day, he says probably 25 times per day. And if you ask him how often he used the battery, he said, I don't know. So, and this shows a bit, there is a financial market, and then there is a real energy market behind it. And both things are coming together now. And I think this is super interesting right now.
But you have to have the battery there to be able to deliver when
sure.
sold on.
If not, then for sure, then you make a lot of loss.
Okay.
So we call it asset-backed trading. Yeah. And this is then full on the merchant market. What happens if we have too many or even more batteries in the market in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? For sure, this has an impact. And probably the peaks, negative peaks, or even the high positive peaks will be much shorter. Not so long anymore, because there are batteries in the back who immediately can switch on and switch off. So the question is, for how long merchant can work? And this is the crystal ball.
Yeah, well, when you look at the market dynamics and how they are evolving, we've seen elsewhere, like in Australia is a great example, where there was this crazy volatility in the market, but then the big batteries came in and they really addressed a lot of that volatility very effectively.
But I think it works. No? So the best example, I mean, we see Australia, and the market is, to be honest, we are also in Australia. It's quite boring right now. But I think this is the way how it should work. Yeah, if there is volatility, this is what energy traders like. But if the volatility is gone, then they do something else. And I think Australia is a good example. You see also California is a good example. The duck curve, you shift things. This is more physical. And from the energy trading perspective, it's then not so interesting anymore. But I think this is the way how the market works. And I think it's good.
And while there is volatility, there is an opportunity. How long that volatility lasts here in Germany.
And this is the big question if you want to finance this project. No? And this is here the big elephant in the room. And a lot of banks are here, I think, partly official and partly unofficial, to understand what are the market dynamics. And I think it's for sure it's not so easy. But the good thing is there is already a track record. So I think just now there's a presentation of Entrix who are presenting the results of 2025, the revenue streams. And this is important for the financing, to get, I would say, a bit more clarity and to mitigate the risk in getting more information about what happened in the market in 25. And I think this gives them a good progress for 2026 and 27. For how long it lasts, that's a big question.
Well, you mentioned Entrix, and there are a lot of young companies that are moving into this space because there is this dynamic market and a lot of opportunity. What really excites you in terms of the young companies that are coming in and delivering these innovations to this emerging battery market?
I think the world has changed dramatically. If we would have had a talk here, 2 years ago, a complete different market scenario right now. AI is everywhere. It's not only a buzzword anymore. And I think the whole programming activities, data analyzing is very important. One single truth. So if you have a big data lake, how you get the right information out of it to make the right decision. And I think there are, I would say, traditional startups like Suena, Entrix, even Mobility House, but even they are big. And there are a lot of new players in the market who probably can overtake these guys left and right. And everything is related more to making a good forecast, to deliver the right information for making a decision. So, for example, we work with a handful of these partners in the market, and one company has battery A and other companies battery B, and then we get the information on a dashboard, and this gives us the right information to say, should we sell now or should we wait for half an hour or even a day? And all these players on the market, it's super interesting right now.
Okay, so it's about distilling this complexity and enabling traders like ENERPARC to make a decision, to make a call.
It is.
Okay.
And I think there are even more, and I've seen another players here in the market, very new startups, who try to analyze what we can do behind the meter. There is, I would say, a bit of freedom where the DSO are happy about it. So, for example, peak shaving, it's good for everyone. It's de-stress the grid on one hand, so it's good for the DSO, and for the off-taker, it is interesting. They can save money, and I think there is a lot of playground behind. And just mentioned truck charging, and automatically, if you want to make a truck charging system, then you need really 1 megawatt power, and this means you need a battery behind it, and you can use this battery when there is no charging. So, and this is interesting, and this is everything behind the meter. And I think there are also a lot of new startups who try to analyze the everything what happens behind the meter and try to optimize this. And this is where we can de-stress the grid, and this is interesting. And I've seen also here a few players who try to bundle this. We call it pooling. That means a normal grid connection point, when a PV plant is connected, is utilized only by 25% or something, and in wind, it's around probably a bit more than 30%. So the German grid is quite bored, in 80% of the time. So we need to find a way how we can increase the utilization of each grid connection point, and this can be even with data center off-takers, I don't know, a good mixture, so that we do not have to enhance the grid in the way how we expect it, so that we can use the existing grid to put more energy into it. And this automatically means that the dynamic grid fees will go down. Because if you have the same grid and you utilize it more, then the cost will go down. And I think this is the main driver now.
Yeah, and so the batteries can deliver a lot of efficiency to the system. We don't need to run quite so many poles and wires, and use the poles and wires we have more effectively. But how are these the grid operators then seeing batteries as an opportunity? Is it kind of friend or foe? There's a lot of discussion here about the challenges in getting a grid connection and negotiating an agreement with a distribution system operator.
I think in summary we can say, if you have, like in Germany, 866 DSOs, it cannot be efficient. Point. So that's it. So
Done.
But it's good and bad, And the bad thing is that we have 866 different formats, different PDF formats. One want to have even fax, other one email. So I think this is the biggest challenge for us. But on the other hand, existing player in the market like ENERPARC, we have around 400 sites in Germany. So that means we are in touch with around 300 DSO quite often. So, and here we are in direct contact with the DSO, and they are very small DSOs. And if you have already an existing plant, and to enhance it with, I don't know, green battery or gray battery into the existing plant, then I think it works. And this is what they understand. So because everyone knows utilization rate of one grid connection point is definitely too low, and battery can help to increase this.
Well, we've also heard some kind of nightmare stories of where the grid connection agreement can change kind of while you're already developing your battery project. Do stories like that surprise you?
I mean, it's there. I mean, we had here, probably had it, the one guy of the grid agency. He made a nice speech and tried to explain this because he wanted to find a solution, but then somebody called, "Don't let him out." So, and this is really the issue right now. It's a lot of politics on one hand. Unfortunately, it is politics, and then on the other hand, you have the grid agency in Germany. He tried to find a solution, but I mean, the other elephant in the room of FCA, so flexible connection agreement. But if you ask these 500 people who signed it already, probably you will not see a single hand. Because everyone, and this is the other side of the coin, every DSO or TSO developer with their own FCA, and this is a disaster. This doesn't really work. And this is what we also in the market don't understand. I mean, in the UK, I think you have 3 DSOs, I don't know, whatever. So, and there is an FCA in the market. And even in the Netherlands, from Tenet, who is one of our TSO, there is one FCA in the market, which is fair. So they really can take it and bring it to Germany. I don't know why they don't do it. It's an issue. It's really a big issue.
But are you confident that this kind of issue will be overcome over time? We heard about learnings from trying to sign an FCA and working with grid operators in partnership.
Yeah. I think this is a bit the German style. No? You always try to make it perfect and let a lot of things into this contract. And then the contract get larger and larger and more complicated. And I always say the same sentence, and probably heard it, a project is only a project if you find a bank who finances it. So, and if the bank doesn't understand this FCA, because it's too complicated and there are too many variables inside, then you don't get a financing. That's it. That's the simple rule. And this is what politicians very often underestimate.
Well, there was also a lot of discussion about grid fees that you'll have to pay the system operator to connect, to charge and discharge potentially. We've seen that double taxation issue in Germany resolved, but how big a threat are grid fees to kind of project viability?
Yeah, I mean, I always say we can accept everything, but it must be predictable. Yeah, so if we see the Baukostenzuschuss, the one-time payment, it's one number and it's fixed and you pay it in advance, boom, fine. If the system is running 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't matter what you paid in the beginning. But if you have a flexible payment, then I think it's an issue. And if this has no cap, then again, the bank can come in and said, hey, come on, we are the lender. We cannot predict and forecast the amount of flexible amount which you pay into as a grid fee into it. And then they don't finance it. Very simple. So predictable is the key.
We need certainty.
Sure.
Okay.
And again, it's we, the banks. No? So, and this is the most important part. And we hope that this really understands the grid agency. And this is, I think they are on the way to get it, because there's also a group of banks who are talking to each other in one association, and they speak to the grid agency and they speak to the politicians only as an enabler. They are not lobbyists or whatever. They only say, if you do this, then we do not finance. That's it.
Well, it's a powerful voice to have at the table.
It is.
And it's good to see it behind battery energy storage. Here at the BBDF, Stefan Mueller, the COO of ENERPARC, thank you very much for joining the Smartery podcast.
Thanks a lot.
And thank you for watching here today in Frankfurt.
This podcast is a Climate Copy production. Nicole Schäfer is our producer and graphic designer. Ina Gossen, Wolfgang Weicht, and Peggy Hertetzille from Solar Promotion support on coordination and marketing. And Matthew Denny is our editor. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you've found us. Get in touch with feedback, comments, or suggestions at podcast@thesmartery.com. And we're now less than 2 weeks away from the Smarter E 2026 at Messe München. We'll be recording a special series of the podcast at the event, so keep an eye out for the pod crew. I'm Jonathan Gifford, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the Smartery podcast.